Kia ora. Welcome to Cinema in Context, as we discuss all things film and the connections between. My name's Jeremy Downing.
I'm William Chen.
And I'm Max Tarrant.
And each month at Cinema in Context, we discuss two films, one current and one retrospective, with some kind of connection in between. So it could be the same director, the same actor, same genre. And this month we're discussing Arrival, which came out this year, and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which came out in 1977. And the connection between the two is that they are both first contact alien films. So yeah, William, do you want to give us a bit of a rundown on Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
Sure thing. So Close Encounters of the Third Kind, directed by Steven Spielberg, in a year that is pretty awesome. So much good stuff came out in 77. So Richard Dreyfuss plays a man called Roy, who after a close encounter of the third kind, starts having visions and just this sense that he needs to be somewhere where he shouldn't be. This sense that there's an alien presence, that something is coming and something is communicating with us, although no one, not he, nor the military, nor the scientists, knows exactly what it is.
Nice. Max, do you want to give us a rundown on Arrival?
So Arrival's come out this year, 2016. It's directed by Denis Villeneuve. This is a film also about first contact, obviously. But it's more than that. It's a personal story about a woman dealing with hardship, dealing with relationships, and she gets picked up by the US government to come and be a translator as they meet these new aliens. And she strikes up a very close relationship with one of the men there, and we see how that develops as it goes along, and time is involved in a very deeply important way. And this is basically the director who's on such a roll at the moment. All his films have been amazing, so we're all watching what's going to happen next, and he's probably produced another banger just here. He's produced before... what did he start off with?
Prisoners.
Oh, he had a few slightly smaller films before that, but then he's had Prisoners.
I love
and he
Prisoners.
had Enemy before, after that.
And Sicario.
And then he had Sicario, which kind of has been hugely popular. Mm-hmm. And then he will be directing Blade Runner, the new Blade Runner. Maybe 2046 or
2049.
24/9.
Well, it's 30 years. It's a 30-year gap, isn't it? I'm a huge Blade Runner fan. It's my third biggest film, and I was really, the thought of a sequel to Blade Runner is really worrying to me because there's such an ambiguity with the mythology of Blade Runner that producing a sequel has the potential to put a stake in the ground for some of those really vague questions, which I love that about the original film. Yeah. However, the fact that it's this guy. And we were sort of struggling over his name before, weren't we? Denis Villeneuve. Denis. He's French Canadian. I'm a little bit happy about it. Really, I'm kind of looking forward to it.
Especially if he brings his team of cinematographers that he's worked on with both Arrival and Sicario. So Roger Deakins and then Bradford Young for Arrival. Holy moly, these are beautiful movies. I think it's going to be a treat. Yeah,
and just the fact that he's careful with, he produces these aliens in this film with a lot of research, and he doesn't go overboard. He leaves us in the dark a bit. He creates the atmosphere around them, not just kind of chucks the aliens out there and we find out as much as possible about them. It's more about kind of intrigue and experiencing contact with something different, and I think that could be brought to the more hardcore sci-fi Blade Runner.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I mean, we've kind of just already jumped into it. I will say that we are missing Sarah at the moment. She's not well at the moment, but she will. She's busy on a first encounter of her own, trying to find her voice. But we'll have her back for our next podcast. But just on your point, Max, I think that's the tension with a good alien first encounter film is that you're being mysterious, you're not revealing what the aliens are. But then the difficulty is the payoff. Because ultimately you want to see the aliens, but the build-up is so massive that how do you pay that off?
Yeah.
Which is probably a good segue into Close Encounters.
Yeah, I find both Close Encounters and Arrival are very methodical in how they do it. Especially Arrival, where at times it feels like some sort of procedural. So we follow the Amy Adams character, Louise, and she's a linguist. And so much of the movie is through her point of view. And step by step by step, how the government is dealing with it, how the militaries of the world are dealing with it. In contrast, Close Encounters, I think, is much more about emotion rather than the constructs around us, how society will deal with it. But even so, the film progresses at such a nice pace.
Close Encounters?
Close Encounters,
Oh
yes.
my god, the pacing is amazing.
It's almost it is perfect. Everything just feels right. You spend enough time with these characters and see where they're coming from so that what comes next, it makes sense both in terms of the structure of the movie, but also, more importantly, in terms of the characters themselves. And I really, really appreciated that.
I watched the film for the first time a couple of years ago and was not that impressed because it has become this. It's become one of the great films of the last sort of 30, 40 years. But yeah, I would agree. Rewatching it, I think going into it with those expectations, I just absolutely loved it. And you talked about how the arrivals from Amy Adams' character's point of view, Close Encounters is very much... It reminded me a little bit of Independence Day, and that you could see Independence Day was pulling from Close Encounters.
Yes. Yeah.
And that it was hopping around the earth. There was a number of different characters. And what struck me as well is that you had these little vignettes of the scientists or whoever they were that were going around to these different locations around the world, flicking back to the Richard Dreyfuss key storyline, family stuff, and then the climax of the film is not really Richard Dreyfuss's climax; it's the scientists' climax. And I thought that structure was really interesting, and it worked, and they built it into the film in a really nice way.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously Richard Dreyfuss, he gets the emotional payoff of the film, but yeah, it was.
It is
really
interesting, and it's interesting because it. People online kind of talking about how it feels a bit like he does a nasty on his family, that without spoilers. I'll leave it there.
Richard Dreyfuss.
Yes.
Well, I think we talked about the
okay? Okay.
retrospective films. I think we can spoil, but the
Okay,
new ones,
so Richard Dreyfuss does end up going away with the aliens, kind of satisfying his great curiosity for the unknown, which is. Some people talk about as a kind of metaphor for Steven Spielberg in his younger days, kind of really just following this curiosity into an unknown space. And he leaves behind his family. His family's already kind of said that they don't want Richard Dreyfuss, but it does feel like this movie's kind of been built up as a drama with lots of relationships involved, and then Richard Dreyfuss goes kind of... Bye. Stuff that stuff.
Yeah, that's my
and yet it's satisfying.
That's my biggest uncomfortability with the film, which actually in rewatching it was actually one of the most interesting parts of the movie. But we were talking about this on our Facebook chat, and that was the thing I said, wasn't it? And enjoy watching a film about your obsession becoming more important than your family.
Yeah.
But I think in rewatching it, I was really thinking, what is Spielberg? What is he exploring with this?
Yeah.
Because is it just a product of him wanting to have a First Encounters film, or what is the subtext? And I mean, I was reading into it. It could be anything from a mental breakdown to someone dealing with something like bipolar disorder, where you're kind of highs and lows, like the way he gets obsessed with creating this model of the mountain, and it's really, really traumatic for his family.
Yeah.
That scene where. It's amazing where he's sitting at the table, and it's the famous scene where he scrapes the mashed potato away from to form the little mountain, and his son is just crying in the background.
Yeah.
And I think, my gosh, this is the same as a parent going through early stages of dementia, or someone having some weird break in the middle of dinner, and just my gosh, my parents my dad's gone insane, like.
Yeah.
And then it turns out not to just be his family that are affected. You see the neighborhood gather around and see this guy as an outcast, as something that's not quite right.
He's ripping up other people's lawns. Yeah.
I mean, I haven't said yet, and it's not hugely important, but I did find it to be... It was worthy of that film of the last 30, 40 years. I actually haven't seen it before. Going into it, and I was just amazed. It was so pitch perfect. It was, like you say, the pacing's brilliant. I was just trying to think then, is there anything that we don't like about it apart from that ending? is there anything that's not done well? The music's fantastic.
Is fantastic.
The shots are outstanding.
The cinematography is the cinematography is so good, and it won the Academy Award for that.
Mm-hmm.
Which, interestingly, Star Wars wasn't even nominated, so maybe they felt it was too special effects heavy.
Oh.
But yeah, the cinematography, like that shot where he's making the model in the room, and then the camera's just in the bottom corner,
Yes,
and then you
I
see
know
it on the
exactly
TV.
the shot.
It's so good.
Which is about, there's some symbolism here that what they're following is, it's an alien, but it's also tightly interwoven with pop culture. There's a lot of TVs. We see the mountain through the TV.
A lot
So
of
it's
diegetic music from the TV as well, from different theme songs of TV shows and ads and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's such an important part of the soundscape of the film overall.
And the scene with the boy and the toys all going crazy, and also just the appliances going nuts, which is terrifying. It's quite actually, that's one thing I will say, is that there were a lot of things in this film that, and maybe it's why I didn't appreciate it the first time around, they've since become cliches. You know, this film has got some really cool ideas in it about how aliens could show themselves before they actually arrive, you know, with the electronics going haywire, with this strange telepathic communication where they've all got this music and this image of this place that they're going to arrive, and just the various things happening around the world as well. Like they sort of set up tropes that we've since become used to, you know.
Can we go back to cinematography for just one moment? The lighting in the movie is
Yes.
also amazing. Just the use of light and shadows.
How about that shot quite early on? They're on the ranch, and it's kind of like the sun's either just going down or just coming up. And I don't know how they capture it, because I don't see it these days in cinematography, but it just has this aura across the land.
Yeah.
And it makes the ranch look really warm and yet also isolated.
I love a good split focus as well, which is you know, is a sign of the 70s. But again, that was in the mashed potato scene as well, where he's I can't quite remember. Is it his face? Maybe that's where the sun. Maybe the split focus is when the sun's crying. But yeah, just and then the wife. I feel sorry for that wife in terms of she kind of is. She's not quite villainized, but she's not portrayed in the most.
She just doesn't get it.
Yeah.
She just doesn't get it, and the reality is like his whole family's destroyed.
Yeah,
he's a bit of a dick, really. Does
he hate his family? Because at the beginning of the movie,
He's not that nice, eh?
He is the whole Pinocchio thing, and he seems just to not like his kids. He teaches his son math by relating it to a train wreck.
And do you think his overall view? Do you think
metaphor?
Do you think his overall, hopefully not the same metaphor from the famous Hitchcockian metaphor of going through the tunnel?
Yeah. I don't.
Does he look upon this? Does Spielberg look upon this as a positive thing?
I don't know. That's what I couldn't figure out.
That he's chasing his passion and his obsession.
Because it is so violent in some ways as well, and he's on his own little journey, very individualistic, very American of the
And he has that I forget her name, but she got nominated for an Academy Award for it. The woman who loses her son.
Oh yeah.
Gillian. The older character.
Yeah, right. And they have a kiss at the end of the film.
Yeah.
Which it is
That's
really
weird.
strange.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess to flip that, she's very much about his son, and that's the motivation for her is her getting her son back.
Yeah. Her son is creepy, man.
Yeah, did you see that Kubrick wanted him for The Shining?
Really?
Because they called him One Take Danny or whatever his name was. Obviously Danny's the Shining kid. But yeah, One Take Jerry or something, and he was just fantastic, and for whatever reason he wasn't in The Shining. So let's move on to Arrival. What connections do we see there?
I mean, Close Encounters is such a formative film. Like you said, it's Independence Day has, because we did Independence Day previously on this podcast, has all these aspects of Close Encounters, and we see it again in Arrival. It just jumps out at you when you're looking for them. They just jump out at you constantly. Like, sorry, you go.
There's even an explicit reference to Close Encounters with the bird in the cage. I thought that was
right.
Oh, same. Yeah. I like that. Actually, you're talking more about Independence Day then, weren't you?
Yeah, but I mean, the big ship coming over. this, Independence Day kind of looks at that and goes, wow, that is just, the feeling when that happens is just so in your body that we're going to just multiply it 1,000 times.
And we talked about when we did the Independence Day podcast that they wanted to take those tropes and then just make them go and kill everybody.
Yeah.
Like, why they were so friendly, let's just make them kill everyone. But in terms of Arrival and the bird, it's a lovely little detail that they don't explain.
No.
I mean, they explain obviously through the scene where Amy Adams' character looks over at the bird and then decides to take off her suit. But in terms of explicitly explaining it, it's just a nice little detail. And then I guess because I rewatched Close Encounters after I saw Arrival, and so I was like,
nice.
Oh, right, there's a nice connection there with the birds in the cage. Yeah.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed Arrival. Went to see it with a colleague, and I think we both agreed it wasn't as good as we wanted it to be, but it was really, really good. It's tight, it's well woven, everything makes sense in terms of just both story and character. The effects are amazing, the score is amazing. Yeah, just a real solid, deep science fiction genre film.
My issues with the film, and I agree with you, I really liked it. My issues were, it was a really slow-paced film, which I really liked that, but they were struggling with keeping it interesting, and so there was certain plot points, and I don't want to spoil anything. It's not major spoilers, but there were certain moments where they tried to infuse it with some sort of action or some sort of drama that just felt like, oh gosh, I know they needed it because it probably would have been a really, really boring film without it. But it felt like it was in conflict with the mood that they were going for.
Is one of these scenes, does it involve a literal ticking clock?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Yeah. I just felt that was quite forced.
Every time one of those scenes appears, I always think back to Team America World Police, where Kim Jong-il's like, a ticking clock!
I found, overall, it's hard not to like it. It is really well produced film, and it is relatively, considering how many things they try to take on in it. They've got all these issues. You've got a personal story, you've got a global issue, you've got philosophical issues, and they do pretty well to tie that together. But looking back, the comparison is good between this and Close Encounters. Close Encounters weaves those issues together more tightly than this does.
Yeah.
By the end, just more looking back on it, I felt a little bit like it got a little bit messy. There's some of the global issues I think were
oversimplified.
And overstated or something. They're kind of definitely oversimplified. Definitely oversimplified.
I liked that they were trying to have a commentary on the current divide that is happening in the world. Or maybe that's not fair because we are, countries are relatively united in comparison to other parts of history. But I think about that tension between having to work together for the greater good, but still individual government cultural differences sort of separating us. But I agree with you; it was pretty on the nose.
The moment, without spoiling it, but for anybody that has seen it, the moment at the end that kind of changes things is super it could be an action film, a really bad action movie, where she whispers in the air,
and then there's united flags in the background.
Yeah, I mean,
wouldn't it be nice if everyone were nice?
It's pretty bad, really, in some ways. I thought.
Although I guess so. I hear what you're saying, but I feel that they earned that because I'll tell you why. I'll tell you one of the things that I loved is that Amy Adams was so flipping good in this film. I thought she did such a good job.
She grounds it.
And she sells all of the kind of... I mean, it's an alien film. It's going to be goofy. And I hear it's a pretty corny... I was trying to talk very cryptically.
So kind of individual agency. One person can... In such a single moment, just be like, "What? Don't worry about it. I've tied everything up." Kind of.
Yeah, and Max, I agree, but I also agree with you, Jeremy. I think that scene, to me, it felt earned, but also overblown. And so, on the one hand, I mean, just from what has transpired and how we understand the plot mechanics, I do think that a scene where it shows all the countries working together and peace being obtain within 18 months, which is what they said, it does make sense in the context of the movie and what happens in the movie, although it does not make it any less silly. But it's two sides of the same coin.
I mean, it works a little bit because as well the film's not saying this is all that your focus is on. There's other things that are far more important, and that's no spoiler that the global issues aren't going to be the thing that really carries this movie through to the end.
I mean, we're kind of picking things apart, but I still just want to reiterate that I really did like this film. The only major thing that made me go was in the middle of the movie.
I love those moments in films. Oh God!
In the middle of the movie, there was a montage, which I didn't mind the montage. Like it jumped, they have the initial contact with the aliens, and then we spend all this time figuring out their language, and now we kind of generally get it. It's the gist of the 20-second montage, or whatever it was. What I didn't like was that it was voiced over by Jeremy Renner's character. It was the only time he had voiceover in the film, and I thought, oh my gosh, what a shift away! Because up until that point, Amy Adams had been doing the voiceover, and it was a voiceover done well when it's just kind of giving you glimpses into their psyche as opposed to telling you what is happening or what to think. But his voiceover, I was like, why did he have to be why did it have to be voiceover? Why did he have to come in and do it? He hadn't voiced over up until that point, and he did it again.
Interesting.
It just felt really jarring, and I just thought, oh, you guys could have done. You could have come up with something. You could have come up with something else.
Well, for me, the jarring thing was the military, and so I don't think it's a spoiler to say that the military, for the most part, is pretty it's not very helpful. There's the CIA always looming over their shoulder.
Yeah, it's like the idiot person in charge.
Like
stops everyone from doing stuff.
Wait, I'm going to talk into a walkie-talkie. And then Forrest Whitaker, who plays the general, who's sympathetic to Amy Adams' cause, he starts the movie as such a police chief. It was like, no, this isn't what you have 10 seconds, and just real clip you want to do this? Well, that doesn't make no sense. And he is so out of place with both in tone and in how everyone else is reacting. And it just felt really, really archaic, or prehistoric, I guess, in terms of just cinema. Oh, yeah, here's the military, and they have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
Very, very cliche.
A bit unreasonable.
Yeah.
Fair point.
In terms of connections with Close Encounters of the Third Kind, beautifully shot as well. Just incredible. And there was that great... I love that shot when they first reveal the ship, and it just sort of... The camera's just going through clouds and moving along, and then it sort of comes, and then it sort of just turns away from the ship, and then just focuses on the army base. Really impressive. And the music was fantastic.
Oh my
really,
gosh.
really great. I mean, when you've got John Williams on one hand, who's, brilliant. Yeah. And I do want to talk about John Williams' score in a bit more detail, but just really kind of eloquent, I thought. A really eloquent score.
Ethereal. There was a lot of use of a cappella, which is pretty cool.
I did notice it, yeah.
Considering how linguistics is such a large part of the movie. Really, really good stuff.
What did you guys think about having the mechanics of... So they're trying to start communicating with these aliens, and it really delves into the actual mechanics of how their language is going to be different from ours in the film. How did you guys feel about that?
Well, it was good. I thought visually they portrayed how the alien language works in a way that was exciting, but also made sense.
It felt like a little not putting a bad judgment on it, but it did feel for a little bit. It was just like a little science lesson, And they're just like, okay, this is how it works, and you're like, oh, okay, that's quite cool. It's nifty. It's an imaginative way that could actually work. That their language could be different to ours. But maybe just took me out just a little bit from the film.
Yeah, I didn't have an issue with it. I'm trying to actually think what part of the film you're talking about. Do you mean the part where they literally explain to you how it works?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the voiceover part.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, I do agree with you then. Because I just felt that the way they did it was so jarring and so and now this is how it works.
There's also another... Again, it's just... The film is great, the themes are great, but it gets a little heavy-handed sometimes and a little in your face sometimes. I love how, for the most part, it doesn't hold your hand, but then it just makes the scenes where it does hold your hand all the more jarring. There's a scene at the very end of the movie where someone says something, and I went, oh my gosh, that did not need to be
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It was a cliche line, eh?
Yes,
and you knew
it's a-
exactly what this person was going to say
Yes.
once they said the first half of it,
Yes.
eh? Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So this does actually, having a bit more of a discussion about it does make me a little bit more worried for Blade Runner, to be honest. Because I think Denis is best when he's being philosophical and not worrying too much about how the audience is tracking along, and then the commercial imperative is going to make that more and more tricky to do, and that's probably where this film started to kind of go, having a producer over the shoulder going, I'm not sure that's clear enough.
Yeah,
and then he goes,
I don't
okay,
know.
fine, we'll chuck this in.
I don't know, I reckon it's a writing issue. I think the
Yeah.
issues we're talking about are purely with writing,
Okay.
and the actual direction of the film was really impressive. I mean, he's not writing Blade Runner, so there's a whole team of writers, some really impressive writers that are working on it. So I wouldn't worry. I'm not too worried.
Okay.
I mean, at the end of the day, a film is lightning in a bottle. So many moving pieces have to kind of all fall correctly into place that
Yeah.
you're never really going to know, are you?
How did you guys feel about Prisoners? You love Prisoners.
So my experience with Prisoners was someone. I was talking to someone at the end of 2013 about my top films of the year, and they said, "Oh, Prisoners is my favourite film." I was like, "What? I haven't even heard of this film." And so I went and got it that afternoon, and said to my flatmates at the time, "Hey, I heard this film's quite good. It's like a thriller." And we were just absolutely engrossed on like a Saturday afternoon. It was really long as well. It was like 2 hours, 30, 40 minutes. And we're like, when is this going to end? And then we got to we were really enjoying it. We got to like an hour 45. And I feel like the movie was wrapping up. And I was like, this film's still got like an hour to go. And then the whole end of the film exploded into something completely different. And I just remember being like, wow, I have not experienced a film like that in a long time. It was like a David Fincher film. It was. It really, really
Good
was.
call.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Sicario though.
Oh, you haven't?
No,
it's good. Neither.
It's very good. I think similar themes to Arrival in that you have a lone female professional in a field mostly dominated by men.
Yeah, I have
going
heard that he
into
talks a lot about
unfamiliar
that.
territory. In Sicario, it's the drug war across the Mexican-US border. Very, very good. There are some action scenes which... It's funny, it feels very video gaming, but in a way that's also really, really cinematic. Awesome stuff.
Oh, nice. With Arrival, I loved the opening shots where it just emphasizes, just a segue, but I love the shots where it emphasizes her isolation. She's alone in these rooms, and just the grief, and it was really impressive.
So, comparing Arrival to another movie, how do you guys feel it stacked up against Interstellar?
Well, I'm not a huge fan of Interstellar.
No, neither.
I thought Interstellar was a great film inside a bloated film, and that it really needed to be rewritten. It was so heavy-handed with some of the stuff, and it was just too long. I loved the ending. I thought the ending was great.
Oh, I didn't like the ending. I thought Arrival nailed its ending far better than Interstellar did. Everything just felt so much more alive and so much more like
it was still going places.
Exactly. Whereas Interstellar was that Nolan thing of tying everything up with a neat little bow, which I guess Arrival does as well, but it just didn't feel as forced. And the emotions were more present, and you just felt more connected to the characters.
See my film, the space film that for me has been the best space film in the last, I can't even remember, like 5 years, 10 years, was Gravity. I mean, Gravity for me was like the film I've seen the most at the cinema, and that to me was like a perfect film. And so I remember watching Gravity, and then like 6 months later watching Interstellar, and I'm like, Gravity was an hour and a half. Interstellar was like 2 hours 40 minutes or something.
But Gravity's, would you say that Gravity's in some ways simpler and less
more visceral,
ambitious?
less.
Yeah.
It's
more like that. I mean, that's in some ways a kind of simple film to make.
Well, it's simple in terms of
it's like
with
Deepwater Horizon. It's like just you've got an event that's going to happen, and you know what you're making, and you're like, so therefore there's so many issues that you're not dealing with in terms of trying to keep it together. And so I just feel like, and so I love Deepwater Horizon, fantastic action, and they could focus on getting that right, but overall it's not as satisfying because their ambition's not.
I don't know. I think that's potentially a misreading of Gravity. I mean, the story, or in terms of the plot, it's simple in the sense
but the
that
themes you're thinking.
But I mean, to get simplicity, you have to be very complicated, and you have to whistle it down.
True. And to do simplicity well is difficult.
They were inventing different technologies to be able to film that film.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Sandra Bullock had to be in like a rig, like a rigorous rig, for like months. You know, and the fact that she's a single actor carrying that film, I wouldn't. Yeah, I find Gravity incredible, like effortless. It's like effortless, that movie.
You should
and
watch
it's been-
Deepwater Horizon. I think you'd really like it.
All right.
Similar, some really great acting, carrying it. Yeah.
I just think that Interstellar, like,
I never watched it because I just was not interested.
I just think Christopher Nolan, he's falling into the same category as Peter Jackson and George Lucas, and that they've
surrounded themselves with yes man.
Yeah, and well, they've built up enough. You know, they're relatively successful that they can just their imaginations go wild, or they haven't, or perhaps the people that they've relied on to keep to bounce their ideas off have become either left the picture or become a bit more relaxed or sycophantic or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what the process is, but it just was so overblown. It was so overblown, and there was hints of it in The Dark Knight Rises, but I still really enjoyed that film.
Well, I mean, kind of tying Gravity back into Arrival, I actually felt, because both Gravity and Arrival, I mean, they share a lot of things as well. Most important of which is a main female protagonist who's kind of driven throughout the course of the movie by the death of her daughter. Spoilers for Gravity, I'm so sorry.
That's revealed relatively early on.
And very, very early on in Arrival as well. And just, I feel the way that both movies deal with it, I feel Arrival is really much stronger. Gravity is much more overblown in the sense that she... Well, maybe it's just the acting, Sandra Bullock versus Amy Adams. Like, Sandra Bullock is... There's scenes where she's breaking down, she's very, very emotional about it. Whereas Amy Adams reacts in a way that's very icy, very, like...
It's under the surface.
Yeah.
She's
It's
so
bubbling.
good at that.
Like, you can see it there, but she is professional enough to not let it affect her daily goings.
She's got a feeling like you're like, God, she could be in tears at any second.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of this resilient woman.
Yeah.
That's what I said. I mean, Amy Adams is just phenomenal in this film. I just thought she was great.
Hey, we've talked about before these sci-fis, throwing back to Steven Spielberg, who first did the kind of thing of focusing on actually the sci-fi curiosity aspect of the alien is actually more put to the side in favour of the drama of a human relationship. And Close Encounters does that perfectly, right? And it's kind of, I thought for a little while, the whole meeting of the aliens was a metaphor for actually a man or maybe a society who's getting distracted from their relationships. Just, there was a particular shot in there that I saw where Richard Dreyfuss is looking up in the sky and his wife is kind of like looking at him.
Yep.
Kind of waiting for a response, and he's just like, so he's
Well,
distracted.
there's that great moment where they're trying to she's trying to kiss him, and then they finally start kissing, and it's like he connects with her, and then he kind of opens his eyes again while he's kissing and looks up into the sky.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that it could be about is, and that's the great thing about the film, right? Is that it doesn't clear any of this up. It could be about so many different issues, and it's got so much bubbling under the surface. But Arrival does that, tries to make it about human relationships. And that for me was a really interesting angle of looking at the film. It's like it's the aliens kind of get built up, and then it does go back to the human side of things. But by that point I felt too engrossed in the aliens a little bit, and I was wondering what's going on here, and then that kind of gets put to the side, and I'm like, by the end of the film I'm kind of going, what was the point of that a little bit?
So I agree. Like, by the end of the film, Arrival the balance does tip firmly in the favour of more human psychodrama rather than
in a quite overt way as well, right? Yeah.
Talking about that connection with human connection, being a metaphor, blah blah. I was thinking of Close Encounters as like the anti-Jaws, because Jaws is about a father who's ultimately keeping his family together in the face of this horror from the sea. And then Close Encounters is really about a dad who just is like, screw my family, I'm heading off into space. So it seems to be that I think Spielberg is just telling stories about the topics he wants to, but he recognises that grounding it in relationships is really important. And I guess as a young man himself, I don't know if he'd had any kids by that point.
I don't think
he had.
so.
No, he hadn't. Yeah.
Because I remember reading an interview saying that if he had kids, then he would have written the movie differently.
Yeah, he couldn't have done it that
Yeah,
way.
right.
He felt completely different by the time he had kids.
Yeah, which makes sense, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about John Williams' score because he wrote the score before they made the film, and apart from the very classic theme, the
5-note motif.
that one. The themes in the film aren't that memorable in comparison to some of his big tentpole.
With Spielberg,
With Spielberg, which I don't mind. It's and I've seen other films where he's done scores where they've just been score. Like I think with the latest Star Wars film, there were no memorable themes that weren't already from the universe. And I think it's probably more to do with the way J.J. Abrams made the film as opposed to John Williams. But just an interesting difference to say Jaws, which was so memorable.
Yeah.
Maybe it was the key theme that does get used in the film is so overtly used, and that he thought, well, if I do another layer under that, it's kind of going to be
Undercut
weird
it.
or undercutting it. Yeah.
So I guess final comments. We'll start with William, and William, what do you want to say about these films?
I think both movies are really, really strong. Close Encounters I haven't seen in the longest time. I think the thing that really jumped out at me was, unfortunately, it does feel a little dated in places. Obviously, there's a real 70s sheen to the whole thing. But the thing that really felt a little out of place, I think, tone-wise, was the how the aliens are actually portrayed. I don't think we've talked about that yet. It is done in a way that, the designs of their ships and of the aliens themselves are really, really cool. And same in Arrival. Oh my gosh, some of those scenes, the best scenes in Arrival, I think, is when they actually go into the ship for the first time. And to see how physics is distorted, to see the aliens for the first time, while the Amy Adams character and Jeremy Renner as well are seeing them for the first time. Awesome stuff. But in Close Encounters, a lot of it is shot and played in a way that feels very, for lack of a better term, kiddie. There's like a little light that's following two bigger spaceships, which feels real Disney-like. The spaceships are followed with a kind of sound effect. And it doesn't become grandiose until the very, very end. It reminded me a lot of, I've written here in my notes, like early 80s or mid-80s sci-fi movies for kids, like The Black Hole, Flight of the Navigator, and E.T., where there's these multicolored lights, everything is very cutesy, which is weird for a movie like this. And it was only after they got to Devil's Tower where you see the majesty of it all, and then you see the scale of the army camp versus the aliens up top, that it became what I wanted it to be, which is something that was more ethereal and overblown. I wanted it to be something that was big and brash and majestic.
I wonder if what he's doing there, because this was the first film to do kind of aliens in a more positive light, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And so I wonder if it's just he needed to really...
Well, it was his first Aliens film.
Right, but but maybe more significantly, in terms of all cinema, it was the
Compared
first...
to early alien invasion films.
Alien invasion films had always been negative because it's the other coming in, and so to look at it in positive terms was a big step.
Not necessarily. I think about The Day the Earth Was Still was when you had the
They're
robot.
still a threat, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose. Carry on.
Well, anyway, that's what I've heard, but and so he had to kind of just softly kind of and give a little massage basically to the audience, like, oh, don't worry, they're kind of cutesy, it's all right. And then it does balance that, and I think enough when this great little scene where Richard Dreyfuss is in his truck.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And they bear down upon him, and there's just the light is like it's like the light is pushing him into his chair.
It's really
powerful.
scary.
It's
yeah.
a great
But there's
scene.
that moment as well where there's like a flash, and it's like that's when he's being imprinted with the memories. That's why I read it anyway.
Yeah. So
Or
I can see that as a tension now for us because we're like, okay, it's fine if they're good aliens. Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll have my final words and wrapping up from this because this is quite a good way to end it. Really, we've touched on it. That ending of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, when the mothership does come is so impressive. Like, I was sitting there going, why is this so impressive? And I just think, I read somewhere that Spielberg said that editing the last 25 minutes of that film is one of the hardest things he's ever had to do. And I guess that's maybe part of it. It's just so beautifully and lyrically built up to that moment that when that mothership arrives, for a 1977 film, I was really blown away by that. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, space films are always fun to watch, whether they're a bit messy. And so going to see Arrival was just still really great.
Hugely worthwhile.
Oh,
yeah.
And philosophically, it just has a lot to say about the human condition and everything else. Like, it was, really good food for thought. And it's one of those movies that makes you think, what would I do in this situation? Yeah.
Well, that's probably a good place to leave it. So thank you for listening. Make sure you check us out again in a month's time. In fact, next month, which will be December, we're actually going to break protocol and wrap up our favourite films from the year. So please check us out then. And until next time, ka kite anō.